And where I see Bitcoin is the ultimate vehicle for humans to store and then later exchange the value we create. A lot of what being human is an ability to price tomorrow, an ability to lower our time preference, innovate and create value today and bring it with us tomorrow. And money is the technology that enables us to do that. And so when I say, Bitcoin is actually the most ambitious technology today, the entire equities market is only $150 trillion. So even if someone like Facebook or Amazon or AI were to be the most successful equity ever and soak up all the equities value, it wouldn't even come close to half of Bitcoin's opportunity. So when people compare Bitcoin to another cryptocurrency like Ethereum or to another equity like a Tesla, they're actually vastly misunderstanding the opportunity and the size that is in amazing money for our species. And so if Ethereum were to become the next Amazon, Amazon's only worth $1.5 trillion. It's a rounding error compared to what Bitcoin is trying to do.
Jack Mallers doesn't just talk about Bitcoin, he lives it. In a world filled with noise and hype, Mallers cuts straight to the core. What if Bitcoin is the solution and the financial system itself is flawed? This isn't about following trends or speculating on prices, in his opinion. It's about finding a solution to a century-old issue with control, access, and trust in money. According to Mallers, Bitcoin is more than just a store of wealth or a system. It is an open, unrestricted financial system that poses a threat to Wall Street and central banks alike. If you're intrigued by bold predictions and deep financial insights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more engaging content. Thank you for your support and enjoy the video.
What is the rationale behind this number?
Yeah, so I want to make sure my lawyers hear me say I'm definitely not making any price predictions on this podcast, but what I do think is interesting is trying to understand what Bitcoin is, what it's solving for, and the size of the opportunity that it's going after. Because I think Bitcoin is often, unfortunately, coupled with the NASDAQ, with the stock market, even with other cryptocurrencies, to where in which I think it's actually a vastly bigger deal and innovation than how people size it up. My math is human beings own roughly a little over $900 trillion worth of stuff. So that means currencies, sovereign debt, real estate, precious metals, collectibles, like all of the things that we own, fine art, right? It's about over $900 trillion. Half of that humans are using as a savings account. So they've what we call monetized that asset. So they own the house, not to live in it, but to actually save the bonus that they got or save the inheritance money that they got. They own the art, not because they think it's worth $10 million of art, but because they're trying to actually save $10 million and persist it through time. So you can roughly estimate that humans are currently trying to save and store and later exchange $400 to $500 trillion worth of value. And where I see Bitcoin is the ultimate vehicle for humans to store and then later exchange the value we create. A lot of what being human is an ability to price tomorrow, an ability to lower our time preference, innovate and create value today and bring it with us tomorrow. And money is the technology that enables us to do that. And so when I say, Bitcoin is actually the most ambitious technology today, the entire equities market is only $150 trillion. So even if someone like Facebook or Amazon or AI were to be the most successful equity ever and soak up all the equities value, it wouldn't even come close to half of Bitcoin's opportunity. So when people compare Bitcoin to another cryptocurrency like Ethereum or to another equity like a Tesla, they're actually vastly misunderstanding the opportunity and the size that is in amazing money for our species. And so if Ethereum were to become the next Amazon, Amazon's only worth $1.5 trillion. It's a rounding error compared to what Bitcoin is trying to do. Everything has gone up in dollar terms. And so being correlated to the stock market just means you're appreciating against a currency that's being devalued. So I think it's too grandiose of a statement to take seriously. The reality that I think is absolutely true is Bitcoin is the most accessible liquid smoke alarm for fiat liquidity. My general mental model individually is that Bitcoin equals technology plus fiat liquidity. It equals the technological advancement of things like cryptography, distributed networks, plus the more fiat currency units that need to be issued for governments to remain solvent and an existing financial system to transition to something new. And so I think Bitcoin is most sensitive to global liquidity, but so is the stock market. Like David, if we were to go back to the macro environment I just laid out, where countries like China are living in a $1 trillion annual trade surplus, that capital can't be invested locally. That capital has to, because if you're looking to be competitive in exports, you can't have a powerful, strong local currency. So when China is making profits in global trade, they have to invest it outside of the country. And a lot of that trade surplus has found itself in the U.S. stock market, in U.S. real estate. So this is why U.S. U.S. dominance and U.S. exceptionalism has been funded by the trade surplus of our global peers. And the fact that U.S. assets are so inflated in price and that there's such a difference between the wealth gap in the lower class and the upper class, it's all a result of the current economic relationships and world reserve currency status and so on and so forth. So I think these things are all generally correlated to fiat liquidity, and unwinding from that's going to be very dangerous. I think the NASDAQ, for example, I do expect Bitcoin to potentially decorrelate in the future because, if trade surplus from China isn't finding itself in the NASDAQ, that's the only reason people were paying 50 times earnings for companies. 50 times earnings is irrational. It was very irrational economic behavior that was happening. So Bitcoin is not a stock. Bitcoin is not priced on earnings. Bitcoin is not priced on, trade surpluses from foreign partners. And so I do think that right now everything is tied to liquidity, but we're returning to fundamentals. A lot of the irrational behavior can't sustain itself for very much longer, and that's the volatility we're seeing today.
Bitcoin restores actual ownership, which has been lost in the current financial system. You can completely control your time, your job, and your finances using Bitcoin. If you want it, it provides you total control, unlike any other asset. According to Jack Mallers, having the ability to own and manage your own finances is essential to building a more just and balanced society. However, Bitcoin does not require you to act as your own bank. You still have the option to delegate it to someone else, for example, by using a service like Strike. The distinction is that you have more options with Bitcoin. That kind of independence is not available in any other monetary system. To remain up to date on the most recent developments in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the digital economy, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications.
I think people overestimate what can be done in a short amount of time and underestimate what can be done in a long amount of time. I think people are always eager to predict that the world is going to change in the next 24 hours in the gravity to which it can change in the next 24 hours, and they underestimate how much can be done in a year, in a decade. And so I think the size of these institutions, how they're governed, the bureaucracy that's involved in changes, it just takes a second. But a lot of what I see personally is a growing demand from institutions and a massive appetite for Bitcoin in the capital markets. And I think their position sizing is only growing. And so the US was constantly sending out dollars, importing goods and services. So effectively what we've done is we've delegated the ability to produce real stuff. Like Russia is the greatest natural resource producer in the world. China is the greatest manufacturer in the world. Germany creates the best cars. The US doesn't create much of anything anymore for this very structural reason, except for financial markets. And so the reality is this is not a very sustainable practice. Printing pieces of paper out of thin air in exchange for real goods and services is not a relationship that is to be sustained. It actually was a reaction to a decimating world war. And so what I think we're living through is the unwind of that. When you see President Trump say things like, we need to fix our deficits, we need to bring back a middle class, we need to bring back a manufacturing class, we need to be able to produce our own stuff, is because there is a global trade imbalance happening where China is running a trade surplus of something to the tune of $1 trillion a year. And the US, given this economic alignment globally, has racked up over $35 trillion worth of debt. And there are no marginal lenders to the United States anymore. We're on the brink of a sovereign debt crisis. And so I think that there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of trade flow reordering that we're living through today. And investors trying to predict when these things are liquidity positive, liquidity negative, how the volatility is going to impact certain structural markets. It's a very dangerous game to play. I think investors were probably caught offside for the first 3 months of Trump's inauguration because he's been so pro-business, so pro-growth, so pro-deregulation that they probably got ahead of their skis. But now we're starting to really understand how the world needs to realign, the impacts of that, and just the true power that a fixed supply asset like a gold or a Bitcoin could have in a portfolio. So I think one of the most important properties of Bitcoin is that you can use it on your own terms. It doesn't imply that you have to use it on your own terms. So it enables a truly free market where someone can act as self-sovereignly as they want or trust an institution as much as they want. You're more than welcome to open a Strike account and I'll hold your private keys for you. Now, I don't necessarily advocate that as the direction society should be grinding towards, but if that is where you are today, there are businesses and services that offer that product. I do fundamentally believe that if we're going to restore any sense of harmony to society, it's going to rest on the idea of personal responsibility again. I do think that society has found a level of comfort that's disadvantageous to human harmony, which is, it depends on who gets elected if I'm happy. It depends on the stock market if I can afford my home. It depends on what they're serving in McDonald's if I'm going to be overweight or maintain weight. And restoring personal responsibility in society, again, I think is foundationally important. No one's going to care more about you than you, and no one owns the outcomes of your life more than yourself. And so I do want to encourage the idea that owning your own property, owning your own money, owning your own time and energy in a self-sovereign way, I believe is in the best interest of every individual, every business, every country, anyone. But you don't have to use it that way. Bitcoin is the only asset that gives you the freedom of choice to the degree in which it does. I think that money is competitive in a free market to serve a particular purpose. Money is a market good, just like a cheeseburger, just like an airplane, just like a house. Except money is different in that you don't consume the market good. So I acquire a cheeseburger because I need to eat it. I acquire a house because I need to live in it. I acquire an airplane because I need to travel. I acquire money because I need to save, store, and then later exchange my time, energy, my effort, my labor. And so money serves a very particular purpose within the marketplace. And I believe, like any other market good, it's competitive. And so a dramatic event like a war, like some political fighting, or even the macro environment we're living in today can greatly expedite a monetary regime change. But I think naturally human beings seek out the best money because it is a technology we invented to solve a very particular problem within the marketplace. And I naturally think something like Bitcoin fulfills a lot of the properties that humans look for in a money to acquire, to save and exchange their time and energy.
Jack Mallers gives us a message that is both inspirational and necessary. He depicts a global economy that is based on precarious foundations, with the United States mainly depending on financial markets and creating dollars out of thin air while outsourcing the manufacture of actual commodities to nations like China, Russia, and Germany. He contends that this system is unsustainable. Paper cannot be exchanged for actual value indefinitely. The United States is currently dealing with the fallout from mounting debt and a damaged manufacturing base, which may even be the beginning of a sovereign debt crisis. However, Mallers sees potential among that chaos. With Bitcoin at its core, a monetary reset is taking place. Bitcoin's supply is fixed, in contrast to fiat currencies. Governments and central banks have no influence over it. It allows people to take charge of their finances, time, and future, and is open and decentralized. Because of this, it is revolutionary. You may utilize services such as Strike to keep your Bitcoin safe, and Mallers even offers to hold your keys if that's more your style. The distinction is that you have an option. That degree of independence is not available in any other financial system. Mallers contends that the key to reestablishing a healthier society is reestablishing individual accountability, or the capacity to genuinely own and manage your finances. He believes that far too many people nowadays define their well-being in terms of institutions, elections, and economic circumstances. Bitcoin, however, changes the game. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications if you thought his viewpoint was helpful so you don't miss any updates. We'd love to know what you think about the future of cryptocurrency markets, so please share your ideas in the comments section. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the next video.